what's up? It's week 7, and we did our murder mystery this week. Let me tell you how upset I am. um, so literally, had I read before class, because usually, I never get the chance to read before class. It's always by the end of the week. So, yeah, had I read earlier, I would have known that this whole murder mystery thing obviously has something to do with this week's reading. But yeah, so you know how you were giving each person different packets? Well, we did the right thing by actually going across. In our group, we went and asked each other what information we had, and we actually ended up switching packets because we were talking about some paper or a page, and we were like, oh, we didn't have that information. So then we were like, okay, so a little suspicious, yes, of course. So then we started changing our packets, and I don't know why. Okay, so here's the thing. I I can't even remember the names, but whoever was the one who did do the thing, um, he had that earpiece thing, right? So that little portion of the earpiece was my main concern, because I was like, well, we were going through everything, right? Oh, okay, we're blaming the wife. Brenda was like, oh, it's always the spouse. Okay, yeah, sure, it's always the spouse. But then I was like, no, it's not. I don't think it could have been her. And then of course, we went through each person, and so when it came down to making a decision, we had voted, right? So we first did a preliminary vote. Obviously, we saw what we started on our own, and we each had different answers, and that's when we were going through each page. And then from there, when we were kind of okay, let's see, what do we think? And so I know Brenda had said the spouse, and then Marilyn was like, oh, I don't know, it could be the spouse, or it could be, oh my god, I can't remember the other guy's name. Whoever is the guilty one, that guy, right? And so I was like, I don't know, I think it might be the guilty guy. Because then I went back to that whole thing. I was like, well, he didn't have an earpiece. Or, well, he doesn't wear his earpiece when he's working. So how would he have heard the noise of, the truck? And Marilyn almost was convinced. But Brenda was the one who kept saying the spouse. And I was like, no, it's not the spouse. And so, okay, so let me get into the reading, right? So with the reading, the main advantage or the main disadvantage is that we suffer process loss, because we're wasting our time doing all this discussion, when really had we just done it on our own and had all of that information, obviously we would have probably been able to figure it out, um, like not faster, but been able to figure it out without having to talk, because obviously everyone has their own opinions. And so if it was just me on my own reading all of that, I would have been able to figure out, oh, maybe it is this guy. But yeah, so let's see what else. So being that Brenda was a grad student, of course, we were gravitating towards her opinion, but I knew it wasn't right, and I was a minority vote, or minority person, right? Because I was the only one who was really stuck on saying that it was that guy. But then Marilyn was like, oh, I don't know, maybe it is the spouse, because it's always the spouse. So I was kind of well, whatever. At that point, I was like, I don't care. Say it was a spouse. So obviously that, can happen in real life, where a minority doesn't, or maybe, the minority does speak their mind, but the other people don't pay attention to it, or they just don't put as much value to it. So instead of like keeping that uh, that minority as a viable option, and the minority was like, oh, whatever, like I'll just agree with the majority of the group, which is what happened with us, which is why we got it wrong. So yeah, that kind of. So when I found out the right answer, I was like, well, well, well. Would you look at who was right? Who was right? And of course, everyone was like, oh no, we should have listened. I'm like, well, yeah, you should have listened. So that was that. But it was a really cool like experience to see, especially the fact that you know like there's so much method to your madness. It's hilarious. Just like every week we come in and do something, and we kind of think it's like not weird, but just like out of context. But then you make it like make sense, and like it really ties in with reading. So I appreciate that. So, some factors that contribute to groupthink, right? You have structural decision making flaws, which include like ignoring input from outside sources. However, I wouldn't say that's like an outside source, but a lack of diversity in viewpoints within the group could probably have applied to us. Um, like maybe if we each had like a different opinion, I don't know, because I feel like if we each had a different opinion, then it would have made it a little bit harder to center in on like the correct person. Um, and then a history of accepting decisions made by the leader. That one's right on the head, because of course, grad student, undergrad student, we kind of just, I don't know what's the word, but we kind of just like put the decisions on her and kind of just like let her lead. Um, so that totally contributed to our groupthink. Um, Another one is just external pressures, because I know that you were counting down, and then we were like, oh my god, like who is it? Like who do we choose? Like, and of course, again going back to just putting that decision on Brenda, where we're just like whatever, we'll just choose the wife. So that also led to us our group think, and then what else? What else? So that was like chapter 9. And then chapter 11 with the problem solving, I really liked. Um, this is like you talking about it in class on how like we don't like when we're trying to solve a problem, the first step is to define it, right? And then from there we try to solve it. But other people, you know, they don't do that step, and they just go trying to like fix the problem, um, which really isn't fixing the problem in the root of it. It's just kind of like putting a band-aid over or something, and use that excuse, not the excuse, that example, like police brutality, and like how body cams aren't gonna stop the police from uh, using their arms against colored people. We're just gonna record police using their arms against colored people. So that one like was like, wow, that's totally like on the spot, because it's too much of a, it's like it's you're trying to solve systematic racism um with like a camera. Like just because the camera is put on you, yeah, maybe to some it's gonna like make a difference, but really to those who like just don't care, it's they're still gonna shoot people. Um, so that is a very important step on trying to solve a problem. And so, you know, the 4 stages that a team uses is forming, storming, norming, and performing. Um, and those stages, basically, you know, like the forming stage, again, you're trying to examine the problem and understand like what the issue is. The storming stage is basically when um, you're okay. So this one, I'm trying to remember. Okay, so this is when you're pretty much like not squabbling, but everyone's kind of just like brainstorming, right? Duh, storming. um, and just kind of trying to get everything out there, again, for a good brainstorming process to happen. Like, you can't really like negate ideas. And then you have the third stage of norming, which is where you really kind of like start making like that those solution or those ideas into more coherent, kind of more applicable solutions. And then obviously performing, you set the method, um, and you try to like actually solve the problem by developing like a plan to implement the solution. um, and so going through the stages, you do have like a pretty successful like way on how to solve problems in my case. But yeah, this is a pretty good week. I enjoyed the class, um, discussions and lecture. They really do fit really well with the readings. So I'm just gonna cut this out and I will see you for the next video.